We'll go live. Speaking of which, we're live now. Welcome, everybody. This is Ryan Height and Jordan Henry. We're actually coming to you not on a Thursday, you may notice, because we have a few things special that need to be covered today. So we wanted to jump on. I know that there's been a lot of stuff flurrying around out there in the interwebs, especially from conservative groups. And we've already put out a couple of press releases. They're up on our website now. You may have seen them on social media. But we wanted to jump on and break down what exactly is happening at the Supreme Court with this leak of the early draft of the Dobbs decision. What's it mean? What does it mean not only for the pro-life movement, but what does it mean for the institution of the Supreme Court, our third and independent-ish, it's always called independent branch. So we thought, who better than your two favorite men who like to talk about women's issues to come back and join you for our lovely YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter audience and kind of break it down and see if we can shed some light on what's going on today. So, Jordan, what in the world is happening?
Well, it's so funny to think that yesterday I was on the phone with someone who said that abortion was their number one political issue that they were that they cared about the most. And I said, hey, well, I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but have you heard about the Dobbs case? That individual said no, they had not heard about it. Well, guess what? Now everybody knows about it, or at least they should. There are so many questions surrounding this unprecedented Supreme Court leak. And that's what we're here to do, is just kind of walk you through from a layman's perspective about what happened, what it means, and just trying to wrap our minds around the full magnitude of what exactly this leak means for the U.S. Supreme Court. Full disclaimer, neither one of us are attorneys. We have several attorneys that are on our Eagle staff as well that we've been consulting with on this. But we are here to explain it to you in layman's terms, exactly where we're at as a nation. So I think that pivotal to being able to understand this leak is being able to understand how the Supreme Court usually handles cases. So for the sake of time, we're going to start with the arguments. The arguments for the Dobbs case took place on December the 1st. We watched those arguments very closely and monitored them and responded to some of the points that were found there. What's not so well known is that the initial vote on the Dobbs case actually happens right after those oral arguments take place, or very shortly thereafter, within a few days. So all the way back in early December, the justices cast their initial decision on the Dobbs case, or their initial vote. And what happens after that is that it then falls to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to decide which justice gets to write the opinion, but only if the Chief Justice is on the winning side, votes with the majority in that particular case. Now, with the Dobbs case, it looks like, based on the leak, it was a 5-4 decision, and Chief Justice Roberts likely did not then side with the other conservative justices. So, since Chief Justice Roberts did not get to decide who gets to write the opinion, it then falls to the senior most justice in the majority to make that choice, and that would be Justice Clarence Thomas, who then, it appears, gave the honor to Justice Alito to write that initial draft opinion. Once that initial draft is written by that justice and their clerks, it then goes around to all of the other members of the court, circulated just among the 9 of them and their 36 clerks. And then there's a lot of haggling that goes on. We think with that, where one justice can say, "Well, I will keep my vote in the direction of the majority, but only if you change this 1 or 2 lines in the majority opinion." Another justice can say, "Oh, well, I agree with all of the majority opinion, but you got to change this 1 or 2 things." And so there's a lot of stuff that goes back and forth to try and keep that majority intact. And then in June is when the Supreme Court typically hands down those decisions, makes those decisions publicly available over the over the course of the month of June. Now, we have always held here at Phyllis Schlafly Eagles, we think that the Dobbs decision, because it's going to be such a big decision, would be likely to come down at the end of June, because typically the Supreme Court will take the most controversial opinions and they will release those last. So that is typically how the procedure works at the U.S. Supreme Court, from time of the oral arguments through whenever the decision is then published, when the court releases those opinions. But of course, that isn't how it happened in this particular case with Dobbs.
No, it is not. No, it is not. Let me, by the way, break in as we're talking about our discussion and say, first of all, if you have specific questions and we're not covering it, or it is something related to what we're covering, please remember, go ahead and comment down below if you're on Facebook or YouTube. We will see it. If you're on Twitter, you can tweet at EagleEdMartin. That's where this is streaming through the primary account that we have, because Twitter got rid of us a couple of years ago before hopefully Elon Musk will reinstate us along with the Babylon Bee. Or shoot us an email. Actually, just email me, Ryan, R-Y-A-N, at phyllisschlafly.com. If you have questions while we're talking here over the next few minutes, let us know. We will address those questions. We'll get to it and try to make sure that, like we said, break this down so that there's as little confusion as possible, since that seems to be pretty much one of the primary goals of this leak, is to cause confusion and chaos and foment a political fire. So, yes, that's what's happening. I wanted to break that in. I forgot to mention and start off with that, because we've just been pounding through the information today. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there are a lot of questions. If we don't know the answer to your question, we will tell you we don't know the answer to your question. And there are a lot of questions that remain unknown because of the unprecedented nature of this leak. Now, it's interesting. We've seen throughout the course of the day, this leak first dropped from Politico late yesterday evening. And we've seen since then, some outlets are starting to say, oh, well, this isn't unprecedented, because even in the original Roe v. Wade decision, there was a leak. Well, you can't really compare the two, because that leak was like 50 minutes before the decision was officially published. It was printed by somebody. I forget who, the Washington Post or something like that. So you can't really compare those two things. Right now, the Supreme Court is still in the deliberation phase over this case. So this is obviously an unprecedented attack on the integrity of the court. The trust that has been violated here, it can't be overstated. This is the ultimate offense that you can give to the U.S. Supreme Court, to violate them by leaking this information. The Supreme Court, as we've said before, is supposed to be, in theory, the non-political branch of government, meaning that they have their deliberations in private, they cast their votes, their initial votes in private. All of that is supposed to foster an openness for them to be able to work through the legal issues to interpret the Constitution well. Now, obviously, it doesn't always happen that way. The Supreme Court has done a lot of activism in the past, but always, no matter whether these decisions have been unanimous or hotly contested, these rules of decorum have always been observed. And this leak truly is an unprecedented attack on the court, because it defies all of that non-political sentiment that we've always tried to instill within the court. So this is just, it can't be understated how important this is.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone brings up, I mean, we're talking about how important it is. Mark just commented and asked, what are the repercussions for a clerk making such a leak? You know, we actually had a really interesting discussion with Mike Davis just a little while ago. He hopped on and talked to some of our Eagle leaders, as all the groups are trying to kind of make sure that the correct information is out there. Mike has joined us several times on our collegians programs and is really just an authoritative voice on this. He's clerked for Justice Gorsuch. He is one of the chief former staffers for Senator Grassley on the Judiciary Committee, actually staffer of the committee itself, I believe, not just Chairman Grassley. So he has a lot of authority to speak on these things and a lot of knowledge. And what he talked about was this is one of not only Is this one of the big questions that's burning in everyone's minds? But this is kind of one of the action items if conservatives are asking, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do about what's going on? The repercussions for such a leak should be severe, and they should be handled by the appropriate channels, which is one of Mike's big comments, was that, there's going to be probably both of the political branches right now wanting to hop into this and take action. Already we've seen some outlandish stuff from some of the Democratic senators, and I'm sure Republican senators won't be immune from wanting to get involved. But the last thing that needs to happen is for the political branches to get involved in this and to start sticking their nose into the Supreme Court's business. They have a system, the court does, to handle this. And that's what we just saw with Justice Roberts' statement earlier. It was a good statement. Of course, it did confirm the authenticity of this document, which is certainly a fun and interesting thing for pro-lifers to get into. But on the leak itself, he enlisted the Supreme Court marshal who heads up the Supreme Court, the police service or the police department? I forget the official name, but there's a couple hundred police officers, law enforcement officials that are dedicated to and work for the court. The Supreme Court marshal heads them, and he answers to all 9 justices. So this is an inside judicial branch law enforcement agency who's already been tasked with this investigation. That investigation should be swift. And if there are criminal referrals to make to the U.S. Attorney of D.C., they can make those. But one thing to be very cautious of is to, especially for conservatives, to ask for outside assistance or for Secret Service or anything else. Apparently, the U.S. Marshals can be deputized, and that's been a longstanding relationship with the court. But having the court handle this investigation and handle this action internally is key to maintaining the integrity of our branches and our checks and balances. But I mean, as far as the repercussions, it sounded like from what Mike was saying, not only would this person obviously be fired and ostracized from the court, but this could amount to felony charges, quite possibly, because this is a breach of all sorts of not just standard procedure and decorum, but there may be some data breaches that are tantamount to, I don't know if it's exactly treasonous activity, but this is pretty high stuff for you to take something and make it available before the full process of the judiciary has had its time to go through according to the Constitution. So this is a very serious offense for whoever is found. And as Jordan said, it's a small list. There are 9 justices, and by our count, 36 clerks and assistants who would actually be in the pipeline to have access to this. It's not a very long list to look through.
Yeah, and I'll point this out too, Mark. I mean, I'll try not to say the word unprecedented in every single sentence during this whole talk that we have, but this has never happened before, so there's not really a consensus on what the direct implications of this would be for the person who made the leak. There could be federal charges. I've read a couple different constitutional scholars that don't really seem to think that there is an actual law that has been violated here. But at the very least, I think this is a career-ending move for anyone. You clerk at the U.S. Supreme Court in order to go on to be a judge, to be a high-profile attorney, and most likely whoever made this leak is not going to be practicing law anywhere in the United States. We'll just have to see what happens. I don't know, but that seems to be almost a universal consensus that this is a career-ending move for any clerk to do this. Whether there'll be any actual charges or not, we'll just have to see where things come down on that. But yeah, it's a big deal for someone to make this kind of a move. There's a reason why this hasn't been done before. It's because this is not only a breach of ethics and trust, but it is something that will affect this individual's life forever. And I think that they're going to be caught. I don't think that you're going to be able to hide something like this, this big, from such a small group of people. I don't know. We'll just have to see.
Well, and it's been raised that there's been a few leaks, honestly, around the Supreme Court recently. Justice Breyer's announcement of retirement actually broke before he officially announced it. There have been a few other things. So there may be multiple people behind this. There may be one very unhappy, disgruntled, politically motivated employee, but it seems that this is going to start to come back to bear pretty heavily on at least one person. And to your point, illegal or not, you face being disbarred or banned from the bar or all of the things in the future. So yeah, it might not be technically illegal, but there's going to be some pretty stiff penalties involved when this individual is found.
Yeah. Now, another question we want to clear up right off the bat here. Is the draft that was released binding? Now, obviously, we know that the content of that draft by Justice Alito looks very remarkably favorable to pro-lifers. And that's, that could be good news, but we do need to keep in mind the fact that this is only a draft. This is a draft from February. It is not binding on the court, because even though this is something that Justice Alito and his clerks have written, and it's been verified now by Chief Justice Roberts as being authentic, it is still the case that it's not binding on the Supreme Court. It's not binding judicial precedent until a majority of the justices officially sign off on it and publish it. And this has not been signed off yet. So again, this probably is not even the actual current draft of the majority opinion. This is from all the way back in February. It's May now. So there has probably already been some changes made to this draft. To what extent those changes are, how big of changes they are to the wording and all of that, that remains to be seen. So this is not binding judicial precedent. This is not overturning Roe v. Wade yet. This is only a draft, so it's not binding judicial precedent. Now, we can only speculate on what the motives might be for someone to try to do something like this and end their career in such a spectacularly unprecedented fashion. Oh, see, there I go saying it again.
Unprecedented.
You can't get away from it.
It's never happened before. Let us reaffirm for you. This has never happened before. Don't let anyone write or tell you or say different in the news. It's never happened before.
Yeah. But that being said, some thoughts maybe on what could have possibly motivated this leak. It very well could be to try to incite a justice to change their minds, or Congress to take action, President Biden and the executive branch to take action, or to just generally cause mayhem. The majority of people seem to be leaning in the direction of this is meant to pressure the justices into changing their minds and making this decision not be one that overturns Roe v. Wade. And that seems very logical and likely to me. In fact, to be perfectly blunt and to take things on a rather dark turn, if this truly is a 5-4 decision and it has not yet been published, then this is a safety risk for all 5 of those justices that are taking this stand on this opinion. Their lives are in jeopardy right now. If one of them were to die in whatever circumstances, the upheaval that this would cause is just tremendous. It's truly unprecedented.
Just embrace it. Embrace it.
Yeah,
you have to say it over and over again.
I can't do that. But yeah, we need to discuss the fact that this is actually putting Supreme Court justices' lives at risk in a way that it never, ever should. And that's why the repercussions for this should be incredibly harsh on whoever's leaking this. They're putting people's lives on the line here, and that's not right. It is entirely not right. And to subject them to these kinds of fear tactics is something that should not be tolerated by the Supreme Court. They should act accordingly, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead, and for the interest of time, we don't want to keep everyone too long because we know this is the middle of the workday. So we also want to make sure that this is a nice applicable length for sharing so that folks will be able to kind of digest all the information quickly. What about the ramifications of the leak? What is going to continue rolling on? What's the damage that's being done by the fact that, we've talked about it's unprecedented, but what's actually so wrong with this? Because this is an interesting point. I've seen mostly on the left, not on the right, but I've seen a little bit of both saying, what's so wrong with transparency? Why wouldn't we talk about this? So what are the damages of the leak that's being caused? Well, one of them is, first of all, trust within the Supreme Court is at this point almost obliterated. I mean, it can be healed, but I'm actually seeing a few of the comments come in. People are talking about, how do we know it wasn't a justice? I have a very hard time believing that myself, just because the accounts that we hear from everyone, both left and right, Democrat and Republican appointed justices, their staffs, it has always seemed that despite some very strong disagreements, there has always been an air of calmer heads. They've had good relationships. They've had working relationships. And the whole way that the Supreme Court, these 9 justices, that it works is kind of built on trust and on confidentiality, that we can hash these things out. And even if at the end of it, if we disagree and we're vehemently disagreeing on paper, to violate the process like this, to destroy the integrity of our ability to make such weighty decisions and interpretations of the law, has never been considered by any justice of any political persuasion or any party's nomination. And I mean, even to current ones, as ideologically separated as it seems, that's just outside the realm of question for these 9, because they so strongly believe in the trust and know that that is vital to any of their ability to continue on this job and the legacy and the authority of the judicial branch of our republic. It's important, and none of them would violate it. So I tend to say that there's no way it's that. This, to the point, the trust amongst them, the trust of SCOTUS itself, is obliterated by this leak. I can't see these 9 ever wanting this to be a part of their legacy. It seems to be exactly opposite to everything we hear. But another one of our favorite things to do, puns, which we threw one in the title here, Unpacking the Court. There might be another ramification of the leak. Jordan, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So already the left is talking about, well, they're not really talking about the leak. They don't want to talk about the fact that this leak is an egregious breach of the U.S. Supreme Court. But what they do want to talk about is abortion and protecting abortion rights and enshrining that in U.S. law, if they can enshrine it in the Constitution with the court. And part of that is court packing. So we could, in fact, see members of Congress attempt to add new seats onto the Supreme Court to expand the number of justices from the current 9 to go beyond that. We've heard 13, 15 different numbers like that, but it very well could be that becomes an issue before the United States Senate as to whether or not they want to expand the U.S. Supreme Court, which is, of course, a terrible idea. If you think that the Supreme Court is political now, just wait until there is no limit on the number of justices that can be added to the court. Any president can just come along, and if they don't like a decision, add another 10 seats, add another 12 seats, add another however many seats you want in order to get to the number you need to be able to get the decisions that you need from the Supreme Court. There's no stopping it. The United States Constitution does not limit the number of justices to 9, but to break that kind of precedent is a terrible, terrible idea. And that's why when FDR tried to do it back in his administration, he was voted down by his own party. They rejected the idea because it is a terrible, terrible thing. Democrats, Republicans, whoever, it's a terrible idea. Now, what we've already seen is that some of the senators have already come forward and said that they're not in favor of court packing. So will court packing actually happen? Maybe yes, maybe no. That remains to be seen. It's looking like it's leaning towards no, but at the very least, we need to be prepared to deal with those talking points that they're going to have regarding court packing. And if you want to know more about the court packing issue, I would encourage you to go to philschlafly.com. Under the media tab, you can find our one-pager series, and you can actually find a one-page document on packing the court and find out a little bit more about that and to equip yourself on that issue to be able to respond to some of the questions that are going to come regarding court packing specifically. But also with court packing, we very well could see an end to the long-standing Senate filibuster rule. That has kept a lot of bad legislation from going through the United States Senate. Technically, the Senate rules could change anytime that the majority wanted to make it so that legislation could pass with only a simple majority of 50% plus one, rather than what the filibuster rule calls for, which is a vote of 60 members, which is much, much harder to get in the United States Senate. And several senators that are kind of on the fence, Manchin, Sinema, have already come out and said that they will not, they would not be willing to remove the filibuster rule from the United States Senate. So it's another thing that we could see some talking about. It's looking like that's not going to happen, but who knows? Wouldn't be the first time that Manchin changed his mind on something.
It's possible.
So, you know,
It's
it's something else to watch out for.
So what in the world do we do now? That leaves us. There's only one thing left before we try to wrap this up. What in the world do we do now? What should the Supreme Court do now? I think we've actually covered a little bit of that, what they should do, what they are doing. But for the rest of us, I mean, if the Supreme Court is going to quickly, swiftly investigate and identify the leaker and then punish the leaker, whatever it is, and they're not going to hopefully enlist the what did we say? The political branch clowns. I forget some of the phrases I've heard today. There were some good ones, but it's true. If the Supreme Court moves forward quickly with that and moves to fix this and restore, what else can the Supreme Court do? What else can we do, or what can we ask to be done to restore the integrity of the court and to move forward what is apparently an upcoming landmark decision? What do we do? And our suggestion is get it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's put it out. Put out the decision and stop this very obvious move to confuse, muddy the waters, prolong, politically influence. If the court is still deciding, and it was even brought up, I think it was Mike Davis who mentioned this would not be the first time that they would release a decision pending the opinions. Here's the decision, here's the vote. The opinions are still coming because there's obviously a lot of work, footnotes and references to be done. But just stop the insanity and the fuel that's being thrown onto this political fire, especially literally right outside on the steps of the Supreme Court at this moment. Stop that and put it all to an end by moving forward with the decision. Do it now and stop the continued obfuscation of what's going on, or the attempted obfuscation of what's going on.
Yes, the most important drumbeat that the right should be doing right now. Those that care, anyone that cares about the integrity of the U.S. Supreme Court and about the integrity of this case, we need to be calling for the Supreme Court to just get it out, get the opinion out there, and make it known this is the way we're coming down on this case. And we can release the concurring opinions and the dissenting opinions later. But let's just get this out so that we don't have Supreme Court justices being intimidated, being threatened, having all of these riots in the streets happening in front of the Supreme Court. Let's just get it out now so that the Supreme Court can let it be known once and for all that they will not be intimidated by anyone through these violations of decorum at the Supreme Court. And that goes right along with identifying who the leaker is and punishing them to the very fullest extent of the law and to the fullest extent of what is possible to do to them. They need to be punished, reprimanded, and they need to know that if you do this, this is what happens. Everyone needs to know the Supreme Court will not be tarnished in this way, because this is unforgivable by either side. It shouldn't be happening, regardless of what decision is coming down.
And as a matter of breaking it down, if you hear the phrase per curiam, that I believe is the correct phrase for this is for the court announcing their decision. Per curiam would be as a court with the discussion to be had later. This is the decision, and then the full reasoning and the research and the filling out of that decision will come at a later time. If you look it up, that's been done several times. And I mean, obviously, this is an unprecedented reason why it would be done, But usually it's an emergency order of some sort. But I mean, this is obviously a great reason for that. Just get it done, because to the point of several people we've heard earlier, it was debated, this draft, which I don't know if you've read it, but you should. You really should. I think I've heard the words masterpiece, wonderful, a lot of things tossed around. It's really a fantastic legal exercise what this draft is discussing here. And I've heard a lot of folks who, for them, the life issue in abortion is not even really their main issue. Their main issue is the judiciary and the law. But even they say, Roe v. Wade was so riddled and full of holes, and it was a horrible decision. Just as far as decisions go, having nothing to do with life and abortion, it was just a horrible decision. And this so wonderfully, Alito's draft decision picks apart all of the absolute garbage of legal things that got thrown into that, and the precedents that were set out of nowhere. So read it. But if you read it, and I mean, it's hugely long. What did we say it was? Close to 100 pages, 98 pages long. This doesn't look like a very, very, very early draft, even though it's obviously not binding and doesn't seem to have the signatures on it. This looks pretty full-throated, very well researched, and very filled out. So this is likely very close to where, if we would have just waited until the end of June without a leak, we probably would see something similar to this. So also don't let anyone confuse you that, oh, well, this is so early, it's likely a lot different. That may not be the case. This actually looks like it could close to be the finished product, which as a pro-lifer, I look at it and say that would be wonderful. I'm sad the circumstances under which I'm reading this, but it's really a wonderful work. So that's another side of this, is take a look at that if you get a chance to. It's really worth your time to look over, even as long as it is.
Yeah. Hey, if anyone on the left tries to tell you, oh, you can't overturn Roe v. Wade, that's just totally unprecedented. Well, there's something else unprecedented that the left did first, and that was egregiously violating this Supreme Court, this precedent within the Supreme Court of not leaking these sort of documents beforehand. And of course, as you alluded to, Ryan, there is nothing egregious or unprecedented about Alito's opinion. It is very well researched from a legal perspective. It is, I think, beyond any sort of reasonable reproach. But to violate the Supreme Court in a way that has been done by this leaker, it should not be applauded. It should not even be tolerated. It needs to be dealt with in the strictest possible terms. There is a lot of good news to come out of this. It's a mixed bag. There is so much hope that can be found in what's been written by Justice Alito. But now more than ever, we need to meet these unprecedented times with an unprecedented level of scrutiny over the goings-on that are happening at the Supreme Court, and with an unprecedented attention to action right now. So we need to, all of us, be raising our voices and saying, get it out. Just get the opinion out there and let the Supreme Court move on with its business.
Absolutely. I can't think of anything more to add other than thank you, Sue, for jumping in about 20 minutes into the live stream. Synonyms for unprecedented are unparalleled, unequaled, unrivaled, unmatched. So, Sue, you need to get into these streams earlier to help Jordan out. Otherwise, we're just going to have to hear the recycled word over and over again.
Well, we shouldn't say something like unrivaled. They might take that as a challenge and do something even worse.
Oh, heavens, it's true. Well, we'll leave it there. That's a wonderful call to action. That's a wonderful line to end on. So thank you for joining us for this special stream. We'll be back again on Thursday. We'll try to find something else to talk about. And Sue, we will find another word to just drive home and let you hit us the synonyms with, or give us the synonyms for. So thank you for joining us. Remember, like, share, and subscribe, whatever platform you're on. If it's YouTube, hit the subscribe and that little notification bell so that you see the new videos when they come out. On Facebook, share it, please. Twitter, retweet. Get this information out, because there is a host of information. I hate to say misinformation, otherwise the executive director of disinformation might come for me. But there's a host of misinformation that's going to be put out, all of it with such political motivation. So first and foremost, it's important that we understand what the facts are, and then line that up against the truth that we know, and make sure that we're not going off into fairy tale land of making it based on our feelings or the heat of the moment. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for letting us break some of these things down for you. And Jordan and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. So thanks so much.